to start, you guys are telling these stories that are very like martial arts based and action packed. What is it about like getting to tell stories from that perspective that excited you about partnering together and kind of creating this at the start?
Well, I've always loved martial arts films back from when I was a child. And there's sort of a variation on the Western. It's good characters and bad characters. I tried to instill a little bit more real life, ripped from the headlines kind of things. Art of Eight Limbs was based on the Syrian nerve gas attack on their own people and what would happen if a couple of the canisters disappeared. I also recognize that the kind of English language American kung fu movies from the 80s and 90s didn't really get made anymore. Like when Van Damme started at Steven Seagal, and people love those movies, and you couldn't see them anymore. So I thought we should bring those kind of movies back with modern sensibilities.
I grew up watching like Jet Li movies and like you said, like Van Damme movies, and then they just stopped being made. And I was just kind of like, oh, I used to watch those with my dad all the time. It's weird that they don't exist anymore. But we're also in a boom of like we have Cobra Kai. Now we have all of these movies that you guys are making out, and like we're kind of going back to that. What for you guys both was the challenge of making sure that these movies also hit a wider audience and not just people who miss this genre, but also people who maybe never dove into it prior to this?
I think, one thing was just it was the story. It came down to having good stories that people want to see. And there's always great stories to be told. We also wanted to kind of launch a new generation of martial arts stars. And obviously there's a lot of like the giant movies, but we really wanted to give people an opportunity. And some of our folks are, we have some of the greatest martial art people of all time. We've got Cynthia Rothrock, we've got Caitlin Deschelle, and we've got Jade Zhu. And then our stunt choreographer for Kung Fu Games is Sarah Chang, who was an accident man, but she's also a U.S. national wushu champ as well as a worldwide. So amongst some of our women, we've got some of the greatest wushu and martial arts of all time. So we wanted to kind of get them out there to the world and so they could see what they can do. And the challenge, I think, was making sure that they could also act. So at the same time, we found these amazing kick booty stars that in martial arts. We want to make sure that they could actually deliver the lines, and we think that they all did a really great job. So it was a lot of fun putting them together.
Well, the two things I wanted to incorporate into these that might have been a little different than the ones in the past. The first was strong female characters. Cynthia was one of the few, but it's a male dominated world.
Mhm.
And I didn't think that's the way it needed to be. So I tried to have strong female characters in all of these. The second was family dynamics that were real, that people are flawed and people have issues, and that's the way all families are. And I thought that would be a really relatable thing to almost anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Shannon, I have a specific question for you because I know you did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which does have like, actual, well, not actual, but like a Bruce Lee
Hmm.
cameo, as it were, in the movie. When how has it been kind of producing something like that, which Tarantino does a lot of martial arts in his movies, to something like this that is so specifically for martial arts? Like, how is that comparison to each other?
All movies are hard and all movies have a special ingredient that makes them super special. And, what's great about Quentin is he knows there's not a genre he doesn't know.
Mhm.
He knows movies, and if he'll walk up to an actor and know what they've been in, things that they don't even remember. So it's always quite fun to see that. But, he homages lots of movies, and that we tried to do that here as well with some of what we were doing. And just, Dan and I are both very reverential to the movies that came before. But, we did these all over the world. We were in Thailand, we were in Mexico, did our post-production in the States. So it just became, it's a dance of getting somewhere, getting back, getting the actors, your English language actors there and finding the right talent there. So it was a wonderful and fun undertaking and a lot of work. And a Quentin Tarantino movie is a lot of work as well. So they're all a lot of work, but hopefully at the end they're rewarding and they're fun and you remember all the great times and forget all the bad times or the complicated times, we should say, and move through it. But right now, we just have happy memories of all of our movie making on these four movies.
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me know that me and Quentin Tarantino have the same skill, which is looking at someone and pulling up random things from their filmographies. But Daniel, how was it working on the writing process of all four films? Like, how did it kind of break down in your brain when you were working on each of them?
Well, I wanted to have four separate standalone ideas. That was the initial. I wanted to have a prison tournament movie. I wanted to have a film that paid homage, and this is Kung Fu Games, to some of the my favorite scenes in the past. I also want to give credit to Ryan Yeager, who was our development executive and director of a couple of these. And we were comrades in arms in getting these scripts to exactly where we wanted them to be to make them. So it was filmmaking is a collaborative process. So maybe the most collaborative art, and everybody working on it deserves credit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was the stories, they evolved over period of time, and that's what's fun about it is like in between some of the big movies and other things, we would kind of keep coming back to them and developing them and making them, sharper and kind of getting into them. But it was a lot of fun over the years for, Dan and Ryan and I to kind of roll the sleeves up and make the magic.
The other tidbit I would throw out there is I was working with Cynthia Rothrock 10 years ago and said to her, I'm going to write you a movie that you're going to star in. And she sort of said, yeah, whatever. And then I did and surprised her years later, and it all worked out as planned.
Yeah,
I
that
love
was the
that.
one thing. I'm sorry. That's the one thing when Dan first approached me, he said, this movie Cynthia Rothrock is gonna be in. And that is the one thing that has stayed a constant throughout the whole, journey of making these movies. So we had to kind of tango with her schedule and work it out, but she's in it.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. And I think this is so cool. I love what you guys did. I think it's awesome.
All right. Thank
We're
you so
glad
much.
you appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank
Nice
you
to meet you over
guys.
Zoom.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.